Facebook and Instagram reels out right now, so be sure to go in and check those out. It's about my coverage of the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight predictions. And if you watched that episode last week, you know that I now have to come out here and eat my crow because I was very confident last week that Mike Tyson was going to beat Jake Paul. I said that some people don't have to follow the rules of ordinary humans, and Mike Tyson was one of those people that he was as Scott Steiner would say, a genetic freak and just built different and built better. And clearly, I was wrong. Jake Paul came out there and he beat Mike Tyson. So props to Jake Paul for whatever that's worth these days, beating Mike Tyson. He now can say for the rest of his life that he gave Mike Tyson his final fight and he beat him in it. So more power to you, Jake Paul. With that being said, the Mike Tyson that was in that ring on last Friday night did not look like the Mike Tyson that was all over social media in the lead up to that fight, posting training videos of him just absolutely wrecking his sparring partners and talking about how Iron Mike is back and that he was going to kill Jake Paul. So there was a big disconnect between the entertainer, salesman, WWE Hall of Famer Mike Tyson that was promoting the fight and the athlete Mike Tyson that actually stepped into the ring. Because a lot of people made a big deal before the fight about Mike Tyson. Oh, he's 58 years old. How will he fight somebody 30 years younger than him? Well, he looked like he was about 68 in the ring last Friday. Now, he made the following statement on social media the day after the fight that explains a lot about why he looked the way he did in the ring. He said, and I quote, "This is one of those situations when you lost but still won. I'm grateful for last night. No regrets to get in the ring one last time. I almost died in June, had 8 blood transfusions, lost half my blood and 25 pounds in the hospital, and had to fight to get healthy to fight. So I won." And he goes on to say more, but that's really the relevant part of the quote for this discussion. Now, Mike Tyson reportedly got paid $20 million for that fight, so I can't be met. If him and Jake Paul knew going in that Mike Tyson was not truly physically up to the task, and they continued to go on with the fight anyways because they've been promoting this fight for over almost a year now, and they put a lot of work and effort into planning it. They knew there was going to be a big payday for both of them involved. I can understand their thought process of continuing to go through with the fight despite Mike Tyson's physical health, because at the end of the day, I think Jake Paul was protecting Mike Tyson in that fight. If he was really trying to be competitive and go for the knockout and be aggressive, he could have. At the end of the fight, you even saw him quit fighting with 10 seconds left in the final round and bow to Mike Tyson. So this wasn't like two people with genuine animosity. As Mike Tyson said in his statement that I didn't mention earlier, but he said that he was able to get in the ring with somebody that he respected. So there is goodwill between them, and it's not like this is a actual athletic competition like it was a sanctioned fight. But they're not competing for world championships, so there's no incentive for them to really go out and like make their opponent look bad or try to like do all they can to show that they're the best fighter in their weight class. There's none of that. It's a purely like business venture between the two of them. So I can see them still going through the fight regardless of Mike Tyson's frail health condition. What I can't stomach, though, is the fact that Mike Tyson got medically cleared to be in that ring in the first place. Whatever doctor approved Mike Tyson for this fight, that's a violation of the Hippocratic Oath as far as I'm concerned. Doctors take an oath to, have ethical standards and to treat patients with dignity and respect. Letting Mike Tyson, a man who by his own admission 5 months ago had 8 blood transfusions, lost 25 pounds in what seems to be an extended hospital stay, go fight in a professional boxing match? Are you crazy? Like, that is not good health care. There's a reason that boxers have to get cleared before they fight. And a big reason for that is they have to be protected from themselves. I said last week that Mike Tyson is a fighter at heart, and he just wants to be able to get back in the ring and do what he loves. And if he can do that and make $20 million, good for him. And that's the same logic as to why you see people like Ric Flair having heart attacks in the ring at age 74. Because when you do a business or an industry or a job for decades, Mike Tyson has been boxing since he was 14. It's in your blood. You love it so much that you will risk it all to do it just one more time. So the point of having to put this roadblock in front of a boxer in his fight of you have to go get a physical and get checked out by a medical professional first is so that there can be a check on that desire to fight, that you can have a medically cleared professional who has to get the stamp of approval before they can go in and fight. If a healthy 28-year-old boxer had to get 8 blood transfusions and lost 25 pounds in the hospital, I would seriously question whether or not he should step back in the ring 5 months later. But to clear a 28-year-old boxer, and then on top of that, to let him fight someone 30 years younger, that's insane. And that's worse than Muhammad Ali getting cleared against Larry Holmes. At least Muhammad Ali was like late 30s, early 40s. And even that fight, whatever doctor cleared Ali for that, that's reprehensible. But this is worse. Boxing should be ashamed of itself for sanctioning that fight. I knew boxing was low, but I didn't know it was that low. Now, I said last week that I didn't have a problem with a 30-year age gap between fighters being sanctioned, and maybe I didn't clarify this because I thought it was so obvious it wasn't worth pointing out, but that belief was contingent on both boxers being well enough physical condition to have a competitive fight. The Mike Tyson we saw out in that ring had no business being there. Now, I hope that he can get the closure he needs on his career, but he should never be approved to box in a sanctioned match again unless it's an old-timers match. And we've already seen Evander Holyfield call out Mike Tyson after the Jake Paul fight and say that he wants to have a trilogy because back in the day, Holyfield and Tyson only had 2 fights. You know, the second one ended with the bite fight. So there's some allegedly unfinished business there, which I don't know if anybody else is interested in watching. But if 2 old men want to get in the ring, then, I mean, more power to them, but it should not be sanctioned. It should not be against youthful competitors. And honestly, if Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield want to go out and have their trilogy and finish it off, I have zero interest in seeing that. I'm sure there's some demand for it. Some people might want to watch it. I don't. I mean, I don't want to watch 2 60-year-old men, for all intents and purposes, beat up on each other. Like, that's just not entertaining. Now, this was entertaining for the novelty of it, but if it becomes a routine thing and it's no longer novel, I don't really care. And I mean, if they can make their money doing it, like I said last week, like, more power to them, but I hope that this isn't something that becomes a pattern. And the scorecards for the Tyson fight, it was an unanimous decision for Jake Paul. Nobody had Mike Tyson winning more than 2 rounds of that fight. So it was pretty much a blowout. I mean, Jake Paul landed 78 out of 278 punches, and Mike Tyson only threw 97 total punches, and he only landed 18 of them. So that ratio alone is just jarring. And when it comes to clearing a fighter, you have to take into account how much punishment will this person be able to take. What kind of doctor can look at somebody who just went in and had 8 blood transfusions, lost half the blood in his body, and lost 25 pounds at 58 years old, and look at Jake Paul and say, yeah, I can, with clear conscience, sanction an event where this man will get punched in the face 78 times. I've never been punched in the face 10 times in my life, much less 78 times in the span of an hour. That's just insane. And I don't know how they were able to get away with that. And so total punches. So when it came to jabs, Jake Paul landed 31 of 179 jabs. Mike Tyson only landed 5. So Jake Paul pretty much took no punishment in that fight. I mean, he took 18 punches from old man Mike Tyson, which I'm sure that counts for something. I'm not saying it doesn't. But comparatively, Mike Tyson had a rough night. And hopefully he got the closure he needed to call it quits on his boxing career, because I don't think we need to see much more of that. I'll say this too. A big part of this fight was the fact that, they had more padding in the gloves than the average boxing match usually has. Well, if Mike Tyson's going to fight Evander Holyfield, they need to be forget the boxing gloves, put soccer boppers or something on them. Like, put bubble wrap, 20-ounce glove. Like, they just need to be throwing pillows at each other to make it even somewhat palatable, I would think, for the average person. Now, anybody who was hoping that for some reason that Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson would be some knockdown, drag out, down to the wire brawl, hopefully you got your bloodlust filled by the women's fight that went on before that. Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano was everything you could possibly ask for in a boxing match and more. That was, I think, the most intense boxing match I've ever seen in my now 10 years of watching boxing. Now, Katie Taylor got accused of fighting dirty and headbutting in the fight. Now, I didn't see it. I don't think she did anything egregious, but I'll defer to the experts on that one. What I will criticize about the fight, though, was what Amanda Serrano's cornerman said after the fight. He said, essentially, that Katie Taylor headbutts and fights dirty in every fight, and that boxing needs to look into it because Amanda got robbed because of the dirty fighting. Now, if you believe that she fights dirty in every fight, and that's something you know going in, A, why would you agree to fight who you know to be a dirty fighter? And B, why would you not game plan in advance the apparent inevitability that she's going to fight dirty? If Katie Taylor fights dirty every time, you can't blame your loss on her fighting dirty because you knew what you were getting into and you accepted the fight. So I didn't like that being said after the fight because I thought it was a way to deflect blame off of what I thought was a genuine win by Katie Taylor. But otherwise, it was a fantastic fight between two great fighters. And that cut that Amanda Serrano got on her face, that was nasty. That was just, like I said, there was absolutely no defense in that fight. It was all just knockdown, drag out, going at it. Now, despite all of that great athletic display that went on in the Katie Taylor-Amanda Serrano's match, the only two things anybody's talking about, even more so than the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul boxing match after this fight, is the fact that Mike Tyson got caught bare-cheeked on Netflix live stream for 60 million people, and Sydney Thomas, the ring girl from the University of Alabama. So roll tide to that is all I will say. And as far as Mike Tyson being double-cheeked up on a Friday night on Netflix, put some pants on, dude. That's all I've got to say. Cameraman, there's no need for you to have lingered on that shot as long as you did. You did a great disservice to America for exposing that to us. So that's all I've got to say about the Tyson fight. In other news, it finally happened. The Chiefs got knocked off. I have been expecting this to happen for weeks now, and it finally happened. After scraping by with tight win after tight win all season, the Bills finally did what the Chiefs were able to put off against the Falcons, the Ravens, and the Bucks, and I'm sure I'm missing one more. but they finished the job and ruined the Chiefs' perfect season. Josh Allen did so actually in style with a great 30-yard rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter that pretty much put the finish and polish on the game. The Chiefs were hanging in there up until that point, but they had to hold the Bills on that drive, stop them from scoring at all to keep it a one-score game. And if they had been able to do so, Mahomes would have gotten the ball back with 3 minutes left. And you know how Patrick Mahomes is. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. You put the ball in his hand with, time on the clock, he'll make something happen. But that's not what happened. He got the ball back with 3 minutes, and it was a two-score game. And those poor announcers, not only was it a two-score game, if I'm remembering correctly, the Chiefs would have had to get 2 touchdowns to win the game. It was 9-point deficit. So if they got a touchdown and a field goal, it would have sent it to overtime. But the poor announcers had to try to make it exciting and say, with Patrick Mahomes, you never know what kind of magic he can make happen. And all this with 3 minutes left, down 9 points. I love Patrick Mahomes, but the way that the announcers were trying to sell the fact that he can make a miraculous comeback was overselling, in my opinion. And he didn't live up to the status they were putting on him. I don't think that was necessary on their part. But as far as the game goes, I think this was good for the Chiefs in the long run. They no longer have the perfect season possibility hanging over their heads, so now they can put that behind them and focus their attention on where it really needs to be, which is the playoffs. And they can also self-reflect after this. A close win and a close loss are 2 totally different feelings. After a close win, yeah, you got scared there for a second, but ultimately you won, and as they say, that's good enough, and you can brush off the need for self-reflection because whatever you're doing, clearly it's good enough to get by, which is all you need to do to win a championship. But once you lose, you have to reckon with yourself and look in depth about what you did wrong. Now, I hope the Chiefs can do this self-reflection over the week for their sake, and everything's looking up Chiefs Street right now because they're playing the Panthers this weekend. So if there was ever a time for a good pick-up, bounce-back game, this is it. Now, the Chiefs aren't the only ones that need to get into self-reflection mode. Apparently, the 76ers have already tried, and it doesn't seem like it went well. So the 76ers are 2-12 right now. They got Paul George over the offseason, and it hasn't seemed to work out for him so far. He's out injured right now. Joel Embiid's been out injured for parts of the season already. Their coaching has been criticized in the media. They've just been struggling all around. So there was big drama in the 76ers locker room. I mentioned that Joel Embiid a couple weeks ago has been catching flack for perceived laziness, and it led to an altercation that got him suspended for a few games with a reporter. Well, now, according to Shams from ESPN, it's not just fans and social media that are criticizing Joel Embiid, but his teammates are too. So the 76ers, because they're having such a rough go of it, called a team meeting the other day. And someone did something very unfortunate if you're a 76er, and they leaked the contents of the team meeting to Shams at ESPN, which, as often as these team meetings get leaked out, you would think at this point the coach might as well just invite Shams to attend the meeting. That way, if they're going to report on it, at least have it reported accurately. I mean, hey, they might as well just live stream it on ESPN Plus or Instagram Live and get some real-time fan feedback about the debates happening inside the locker room. Because if you're a Sixers player, I don't see what good it does, or a Sixers staffer, or I would imagine somebody, whoever leaked that, had to be connected with the Sixers organization. Or somebody in the Sixers organization told somebody who then leaked it. But at the end of the day, if you're inside that meeting, what happens in the house stays in the house. You got to be able to trust who you have in your inner circle. And if you can't do that, then the Sixers really need to have a big soul-searching existential crisis moment, because that just can't fly. If you're culture isn't so tightly knit that you can't even have a team meeting without somebody running to the press afterwards, that's a problem. But per Shams, the meeting essentially consisted of the coaching staff criticizing the players for not trying hard enough, the players criticizing the coaches for not pushing them hard enough, and Tyrese Maxey called out Joel Embiid for being late all the time and setting a bad example to the rest of the locker room. Now, Joel Embiid has responded to that leak by saying that whoever leaked it is a real piece of you-know-what. But even then, we talked about a lot of things. I don't want to get into the details, but the whole thing probably took 30 seconds. And by that, he means his interaction with Tyrese Maxey. Now, the Joel Embiid thing, it's what everybody's talking about. He's their superstar player. It's what's making the headlines. So I understand it, and I can get the frustration. I mean, Embiid, you're being paid the big bucks. That includes showing up to work and being a team player and putting the team first. You're a leader. You've got to lead. I get that. I don't think it's that complicated or that interesting of a story to get too in depth in. But the part about the Shams report that interests me the most, and I think is kind of sad, is the kind of chicken and the egg debate between the coaches and the players, where the coaching staff are criticizing the players for not trying hard enough, and the players are criticizing the coaches for not pushing them hard enough. I'm with the coaching staff on this one. If you're a grown man getting paid hundreds of thousands, let's just go worst case, you're a bench player, not even making the millions. You're still getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to play in the NBA, a game that you presumably love if you've made it your profession. Why do you need a coach to push you to play hard? If you've gotten to the NBA level, then surely to goodness it's ingrained in you to be competitive, to want to win. You shouldn't, at that age, you shouldn't need Doc Rivers to push you to try when you're a professional going into work doing your job. So that, I think, is just sad that players need constant prodding to do what they're supposed to do, which was put it all on the court. If you're an athlete, you get paid and people come to see you, give it your all, and put in the effort that got you to this point. So, I mean, sure, the coaches, if there is an issue there with effort, then yeah, don't give them a free pass or don't be timid and afraid to call out players that aren't doing what they need to be doing, like Joel Embiid. It shouldn't take Tyrese Maxey to call out Joel Embiid for being late all the time and setting a bad example. Doc Rivers should have been doing this weeks ago. So to that extent, I understand it, but I think the big issue is the culture of being able to be lazy and tardy in the first place. Do you think with Michael Jordan's Bulls back in the day that Scotty Burrell and John Paxson were able to show up late for practice? I mean, Dennis Rodman going to Vegas aside, you do have to make pragmatic acquiescences when you can. But no, like your culture, if you want to be a winning, forget sports organization, if you want to be a winning business, political organization, sports team, I don't know, whatever it is you want to do, university, you have to instill hard work and dedication and motivation into the culture of whatever community it is you're trying to build. And the Sixers clearly have not been doing a good job of that. You would like to not need it to have to be forced on the players. You would like to, have players here that want to put in the work, but the players are right in that if they can't bring it upon themselves to be motivated, then the coaches do need to either trade them or try to find a way to bring out the motivation out of them, whether it be the carrot or the stick. But I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to follow that story going forward to see what happens with the 76ers, if this meeting will have any actual payoff, if it'll turn their organization and their season around, or if this is just the beginning of the end and we're about to see an ugly breakup between Joel Embiid and the 76ers, because that's already what some people are calling for too. Rob Parker on Fox Sports Radio said they need to trade Joel Embiid because he's been there for about 10 years now and they haven't even got to the conference finals. So it's not like if you cut your losses with Joel Embiid, it would be that big of a loss. As Rob Parker put it, we cannot make the conference finals without you. But that would be crushing, I would imagine, for any Sixers fans who have heard for years, trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. The second, Joel Embiid is the physical embodiment of the process. And if Joel Embiid gets traded and they don't even sniff a finals appearance out of it, that's the end of the process. And all of that waiting and patience and tanking and plotting for the day where we will finally be the top dogs in the NBA was all for nothing. So I understand the hesitance on the part of the Sixers to trade Embiid because you don't want to have to admit that the process was a failure. And you got to retrust the process again. So, I don't know. Fingers crossed they can figure something out, but I don't have high hopes. I am 2-12. They've already lost more games in the first month of the season than the 2016 Warriors lost all season. So, we'll see. This time next week, it'll be Thanksgiving. It'll be, NFL, big day for them. So that'll be really fun. We've got the Lions and the Bears, the Giants and the Cowboys, and the Dolphins and the Packers will be the Thanksgiving Day matchups. I'll be back home in Georgia, so Levi will be tuned in for that one. Just to go ahead and give some rough predictions, I'm taking the Lions to beat the Bears. I'm taking the Giants to beat the Cowboys. I mean, I think the Cowboys is a better team, but with Dak being injured, they just haven't played good lately. They just lost again this week. Just not looking good for the Cowboys. So I would imagine that they're going to keep on losing. And I think the Packers will beat Dolphins. So we'll see how that shakes out. And hopefully we get some good football on Thanksgiving and everybody has a good time sitting down, eating, and enjoying family and watching some good games. So with that being said, I will catch y'all next week on next week's episode. We'll be breaking down the fallout of Survivor Series War Games and, of course, discussing NFL football. As far as War Games go, I should mention this too before I hop off the stream for tonight. WWE has decided, dumbly, I think, to stick with the tradition of making War Games 5-on-5. I think it only needed to be Bloodline versus Bloodline. And instead, they've decided to add an extra non-Bloodline member on each team. And it's on the Solo Sikoa's Bloodline side, they added Bronson Reed. And it's looking like they're going to add Seth Rollins on the Roman Reigns Bloodline side. I don't think adding Seth Rollins makes a whole lot of sense given his history with the Bloodline and what he said on Raw this week about not wanting to team with Roman Reigns under any circumstances. But he said that, and then Solo Sikoa's crew cost him his match. So if I had to guess, I think Seth Rollins will be the fifth man for Team Reigns. And I think Solo's Bloodline needs to win. I think they kind of have to in a way, unless Paul Heyman comes back. Paul Heyman is the one outstanding X factor in this Bloodline storyline. A lot of people are hoping that he'll bring CM Punk or Brock Lesnar back with him when he makes his big return on Sunday because he's expected to, but we'll see. And I think that if you have Roman Reigns' Bloodline wins, it pretty much, it's over with. Roman, they won. He's back on top. He might could have a rubber match, but after War Games, that should be the definitive end of this issue for a while. I think you need to have Roman lose again and really start to question whether or not he's still got it, whether or not he's still the Roman Reigns who was the king of the hill for 4 years in WWE. I mean, he's lost the last 2 matches that he's been in. I think let him lose the third. Maybe not a fourth, might be pushing it, but let him lose some, have him really have to reassess what it is that he wants, who he is as a person, maybe start to have some character growth if they're going to try to turn him babyface, which it looks like they're doing. He still hasn't apologized to Jey Uso or Jimmy Uso or Sami Zayn for all the awful stuff he's done to them over the years, or Cody Rhodes even. So I think it's time to have Roman lose this, let this loss prompt some, re-evaluations in his life, have him start going good, and then have Solo come in and say, I beat Roman Reigns twice. I'm now the undisputed tribal chief. But whenever it's time for The Rock to come back, have him defer and pass up the mantle to The Rock, and now The Rock is a tribal chief, and you have a good reason for Rock to not like Roman, because once Roman does his, babyface turn, he'll be a good guy again, and Rock can say he's gone soft and he doesn't have that killer instinct that makes our bloodline successful, or whatever reason he wants to give. And then you have a good reason for Rock and Roman to go after each other. But I do want to see Rock and Cody Rhodes first. But we'll cross all those discussions when we get there. With that being said, y'all have a good weekend, and I'll see y'all on Thanksgiving.